Sup guys, Overdov here. In this video we're gonna be talking about death, demise, collapse, end of dominance of the USD, whatever form you prefer. I'm honestly tired of the amount of FUD and at times just plain stupidity around this topic. And I'm not gonna show you any articles here, because if you're watching this video there's like 99.99% chance that you already seen tons of articles, maybe videos on that. And as usual here, I will try to drop my 2 cents and try to separate FUD from the facts. But first, disclaimer, nothing in this video is financial advice, always do your own research. Also, like, I'm not an economist, I'm just expressing my subjective points of view. And also, I'm gonna make several statements up front. I'm a proponent of crypto. I believe that in the long term, crypto will prevail, but not now. I'm not a fan of current financial system, the banking system and the USD. I think the USD has its problems, current financial system is pretty awful, and the banking system is pretty awful as well. I think they need substantial changes to make them better. However, I don't think that they will collapse anytime soon, nor do I want them to collapse. Okay, let's start. And I'm just gonna do the whole thing in the form of whiteboard. So first of all, I'm splitting the whole thing into 3 categories. They are obviously connected between each other. We have reserves, we have trade, and we have deals. And deals is basically where all the information and conclusions are currently coming from, but we're gonna explore that a bit later. So US dollar is currently the world's reserve currency. I do believe that if there were several reserve currencies in the world, that would actually be better. And even the chairman of FUD, Jerome Powell, once said that there could be more than one reserve currency. So I think people are putting too much emphasis on that. I'm not going to go back to like World War II and start the whole discussion how and why the USD became the world currency, like all the pacts and deals and the politics, all of that. We're just going to take that face value. It is what it is. So currently, if we look at the structure of central bank's reserve, we'll see that around 60% is USD, 20% euro, and 20% are the rest of currencies. And obviously, some of these reserves, you can argue that they are actually meant for trade. But let's just say that all the reserves here are actually for the long-term stability of the countries. And so in a lot of publications for the past, I don't know, like probably 15 years, you can find a lot of questions. Can some other currencies become the reserve currencies as well? Maybe yuan, maybe the euro. But let me ask you this, how would you change this basket if that was up to you? Because it doesn't matter whether or not you like United States, you like USD or not. I think it would be fairly silly to argue against the point of stability of the USD compared to a lot of other currencies. And again, if we're looking for stability and sort of the safe haven, historically the safe havens would be Japanese yen, Swiss franc, and also gold. I didn't mention gold here, but there's obviously some gold that central banks hold. However, I think over the last 10 years probably, we sort of a little bit shifted from that. Japanese yen became less popular, even though most central banks still hold it. Alongside with Swiss franc, they hold it in their basket of reserves, and gold too. And maybe you want to add like Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, but again, it's going to be like a small percentage of the basket. So I think if we look at developed countries, I guess you can increase the euro part compared to the USD. In my opinion, it would be better if the usage and the dominance of the euro would come a bit closer to the USD, but ultimately I think it doesn't matter in this case because the USD and the euro are so similar. What else can you replace the USD here with? I think you have to be absolutely mental to use the currencies of developing countries like India, Brazil, because they are so incredibly unstable. And the main contender here would be definitely yuan. My personal view on yuan is, since it doesn't have the floating exchange rate, and it's basically the exchange rate of yuan to USD is controlled by China government, and it's effectively pegged to USD. That's like the whole bigger topic. If you get rid of USD, where's it pegged to? And if it's pegged to nothing, effectively China government can do whatever they want with the exchange rate. I mean, they can pretty much do whatever they want with it now, but it's gonna be a lot worse then. So to summarize the topic of reserves, central banks looking for stability. And as much as people might not like the USD and the US dollar is a lot more stable than other currencies. And then we arrive at the topic of the trade, which is connected to the current deals discussions. Forgive my drawing skills here. Let's just say we got two countries, and those countries wanna trade with each other, and they have their own national currencies. Let's just say theoretically this is India with Indian rupee, and this is gonna be, let's say, Brazil. And so they trade goods with each other and using USD to settle their contracts. So we already established that one reason for using USD is because it's pretty stable. And the second reason is, I think, it's because it's convenient. Not because, like, people saying, oh, because it's USA dominance, if they not gonna settle in USD, the US government will be mad and they're gonna impose all sorts of bad things on them. No, it's just convenient. Why is it convenient? Because let's say that Brazil sells some stuff to India and India pays in the USD. So this USD come into, say, this bank, and the company who sold it can actually usually right in their bank exchange this USD for real without even going to foreign exchange. I mean, it depends on the sum, obviously, but don't forget that Brazil is holding some reserves of USD, and also India holds some reserves of USD, and they also have a pretty big circulating supply of USD in their economy, which then allows this bank to exchange on the fly, or it allows, let's say they have some local exchanges, to exchange that on the fly, and this company gets real right away. Same goes the other way. If India gets the USD, they can exchange. I mean, you can pretty much say it about any country. In pretty much any country, the circulating supply of US dollars is big enough and the liquidity is good enough to exchange those dollars for the native currency, usually right there in the bank, with the lowest spreads. So we're getting the best exchange rate. But what's gonna happen if they decide, okay, we're not gonna sell in USD, FUSD. So Brazil sells something and they got rupees. Yahoo! What are you gonna do with the rupees in Brazil? Nothing. Like, no local bank will exchange your rupees for real. That's just not gonna happen, right? Realistically. So these rupees, they come into a bank, and it doesn't matter what side this bank is on. It can be in Brazil, it can be in India actually, it can be international bank, it doesn't matter. All we know, there are rupees sitting there. So what this bank is doing? The bank is going to foreign exchange, because what else are you gonna swap your rupees for reals? You go to foreign exchange, and foreign exchange is basically the global network of banks who can swap currencies. And what you will find out on Forex, that 90% of the volume of the transactions is actually done with the USD. And what you will find out also, that if you want to swap one exotic currency to another exotic currency, we're not talking majors, right? So like trying to swap these rupees into real, there's probably not going to be direct swap with enough liquidity there, or it's going to be insanely big spreads. So what it actually is, you first swap in your real to USD, and then you swap in this USD to the real. Funny how this works. That even though you actually decided to not use USD to settle your trade, at the end of the day, the USD is still in transaction, but only instead of Here, instead of here in the bank, it's on the foreign exchange. Again, this is the most effective way. This is the cheapest way, because USD and the euro, for that matter, have the highest liquidity. It's very thick, it's very narrow spreads, it's very efficient. Whereas if you use exotic currencies, it's a lot less efficient. The one example where it may actually work is when the trade balance between the two countries is close to zero. Then you can actually say that, okay, the one country gets the currency of another country and it sits in the pool, and then this currently is being used to pay for the goods on the other side. That's okay. But in most cases, trade balance is skewed one way, so you always have more currency constantly coming to the one side of the trade. Let me also provide another example here. So we have a country again, and this country used to settle all of their trades in USD, for example, or majority of the trades in USD. And let's just say that, I don't know, it's Brazil again. You know what, we can actually take one deal from here, the China-Brazil deal. You have the China. Brazil exports more goods to China than China exports in more goods into Brazil. So there's supposed to be more money coming Brazil's way. So now they're saying, okay, we're gonna trade in yuan and real. In this case, we can simplify that and saying that, okay, more yuan's gonna be coming the Brazil way. Now let's just say that this is the previous one. If they were settling in USD, Brazil has, after all trades have been completed, let's just say that Brazil has X amount of money sitting in USD. And now, after the trade deal, they're gonna have the same amount of money sitting in yuan. And you can say, well, cool, what's the problem? And the problem is that China is not the only trade partner of the Brazil. So we have tons and tons more countries that Brazil does the trade with. And let's just say that we have this country 3. And the trade balance goes that Brazil exports less from this country, so the money flow goes to country 3. And previously they could have used these dollars to settle with this country. But now they have yuan instead of their USD. So unless this country will also accept payment in yuan, Brazil will have to go again and exchange that on the forex for some currency that will be accepted by this country. So we have all this web of countries trading between each other, because it's not like one global market where everything is being settled. Countries have different agreements, they use in different currencies. So again, if you take every deal like separately, in a vacuum, you might think that, okay, this is actually a good deal, we're gonna cut here, cut there, sort of, until you actually start to look at the big picture of that and realize that, well, maybe it's not that great. But to summarize the point, why do countries settle in the USD? This is because of like political reason? I don't think so. I think it's convenience, because it's the tightest spreads, it's the biggest liquidity. It can be exchanged a lot of times for the like reasonable amounts right in the banks without actually going to a foreign exchange. It just works. And again, I don't care what currency you're using. You can replace, in this equation, you can replace USD with the euro, or you can, instead of currency, use Bitcoin, or you can use gold. It doesn't matter. But when it's accepted by everybody, when it's used by everybody, it is very convenient. And I think that's why initially, when we have the proper adoption of crypto, we're gonna, like, every trade's gonna be settled with crypto, because it's so much faster, it's so much cheaper, and like it's so much easier for everybody to get on board. But again, it's sometimes in the future. We have a long way to go with crypto adoption before we can actually see that. And also I wanted to make like a separate topics about the petrodollar and petro-yuan. But I think the whole trade thing is kind of covers it, because it's effectively the same thing. Okay, now let's just go through those number of deals that been, I think, in a lot of cases blown completely out of proportions by the media. So China-Russia deal is a long-standing, and this is probably the one deal where we do see a lot of development in terms of yuan actually replacing the USD. In fact, I think today or yesterday we had the news that the volume of yuan actually surpassed the volume of USD. But this is an example where it's basically happening because of the sanctions, and it's very skewed because Russia have to orient itself more to the east from the west. But still USD and Euro, they are in circulation, and they're gonna remain in circulation because you still need that for the trade, and you still need that for use by the citizens, for tourism and stuff like that. Then the China-Brazil deal, I mean, it's obviously, we kind of covered that already. If they want to settle in yuan or real, I mean, that's great. BRICS, we actually have the news that the BRICS countries can potentially be developing their new currency that's going to be used for trading. I mean, this is just like ridiculous, honestly, because by that logic, just use yuan, because like you already have these two, China, Brazil, and Russia, and that's like the big part of the BRICS. They just need to better connect India, and if they want to settle on something different, okay, that's great. If they want to create a new currency, cool, but like what is it going to be based on? What is it going to be pegged to? Like there are so many questions. Who's gonna control supply, like all of that. I just don't believe that anybody in their right mind would now, for the trade alliance, create new currency. Even like developing like a crypto that's gonna be used between two currencies is already problematic if you have uneven trade balance, because like for the reasons we already described. I think it's mostly FUD about the new currency, especially considering that the whole origin of that story comes from the Russian politician's speech, so it doesn't have real merit currently. Then we have China with Saudi Arabia as well, so the petro-yuan theme. What I encourage you to do after this video, I mean, if you still watching up until this point, you're like a real hero, because I'm like rambling here, but go on Google News and just try to find the publications about like petro-yuan, about the death of the dollar. There are publications that goes back to like pre-2010, so like every year there are publications with those topics, but very little actually happens. And Saudis, I think, as usual, playing their own game. Then we have Brazil, Argentina creating the, I don't know, what is it? Like the currency for the Latin America. I don't think it has any impact. Honestly, again, I don't have anything against Brazil and the region as a whole, but Brazil has a lot of problems, like region as a whole has a lot of problems with the corruption. The economy is not actually growing as much. I think people who were bullish on that region for the last 10 to 20 years, they kind of missed, honestly. So even if they manage to somehow create something, it's not going to have any effect globally. And then Emirates to India deal, where they potentially can settle with rupees. I think it's gonna come down again to the what trade balance actually exists between countries, because if it's roughly the same, if you can bring the trade balance to being somewhat equal, you can settle with any currency. It's not gonna make a difference. But if it's heavily skewed, I don't know why Emirates want so many rupees to go to foreign exchange and then exchange them for USDs or dirhams. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. If you want to bring the USD dominance lower, if we want to bring it down, and I think it would be positive to bring it down, but I don't think that somehow it's gonna be demise of USD and the like yuan or some other currency magically gonna appear as number one in the world. That's never gonna happen. Especially considering that we sort of move into a new era where like every country developing CBDCs now. So not only we have the whole crypto market and crypto revolution, we also have CBDCs, and how they're gonna work between each other, like that's a topic for like 2025 and beyond. And ultimately I believe USD is gonna be completely fine, because again, at the end of the day, you can't just say that the world reserved currency gonna fail without actually providing an alternative. And as we already seen, like, what's gonna be the alternative? There is no alternative right now. You can't just magically flip USD to something else and suddenly just everything gets better, and I don't think that's possible with the current state of global economy. And also one last point that I already kind of touched. Every year, starting from like early 2000s and actually even earlier, there are publications about the demise of dollar or rise of some other currency, all of that every year. Again, if you don't believe me, go to Google. If you search the phrase, you can click on the news, and on that tab you can click tools and set the time frame for the publications. You're gonna see that. It's just, I think now the media noise is at its highest. And as I already pointed out, I think this era of post-truth, where the facts matter less than this noise, it makes the noise even louder. But I personally will try to separate this noise and the FUD from actual facts, because I'm personally trying for myself to be historically correct. That's what I care about. Not being the loudest and getting the max amount of clicks and views and all that. And there are some minor things that I didn't cover, but I think I'm not gonna go back now, because I feel like I sort of summarized it good enough. So if you got until this point, thank you very much for watching. If you find the video helpful, please drop a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you soon.